Formula One arrives in Abu Dhabi for the last race of the 2020 Formula One season. It's the Yas Island, Yas Marina in Abu Dhabi. We've had 5 different championship Grand Prix winners this year. Bottas, Hamilton, Verstappen, Gasly, and more recently Sergio Perez. It's the last race of the year. The season ends on the 13th of December here in Abu Dhabi. In the Drivers' Championship, Lewis Hamilton is already the champion, 332 points, but the battle for third is still brewing. Sergio Perez now ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, but Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, Alexander Albon, Lando Norris, Lance Stroll and Pierre Gasly are all in the battle and could all take third place this weekend. Whoever finishes ahead of one of the other cars will take fourth in the Constructors. The second page shows a different story. 23 drivers have now finally taken part in this season. So Esteban Ocon looks to break back through. He's only on 60 points. He's 11 points behind Gasly. Vettel, second page of the... Then that's followed by Kvyat, Hülkenberg, who's completed 3 races. Raikkonen, Giovinazzi scoring points for the first time. Then it's Giovinazzi ahead of Grosjean, Magnussen, Latifi, Akin and Fittipaldi. In the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes are already the champions, 540 points. Aston Martin have held off for second. The battle for third is the big point. Racing Point versus McLaren versus Renault into this weekend. Ferrari are a midfield team, then Alfa Tauri, Alfa Romeo, Haas and Williams still have no points on the board. It's the 2020 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix on Yas Island, and this is the watch along for Free Practice 3. Let's take a look around the Yas Island, Yas Marina circuit, Emirates 3.451 minutes, 2 DRS zones, and a hard abrasive proves Formula One can race in it. Start the lap at the exit, turn 21, copy a nice square run down a corner. Now hurtle down towards turn 1, a left-hander from 7th gear, brake all the way down, take it 4th gear, right the exit curb a lot, and then really hug the inside line through turn 2 and turn 3 as it launches you back down towards 5 and 6 chicane area. The GT cars go straight on. Formula One takes the chicane. This is where Schumacher and Liuzzi made contact back in 2010. Turn 7, past the fans, although this is a closed event. A double apex right-hander, then really compromise it. Down the back straightaway, open up the DRS now and pull 8th gear and just try and tow off the car in front of you as much as you can before you hit the braking zone. Brake at 100 metres, not 150, to try and get the best braking spot down towards turn 8 and 9, the S chicane. Cross now underneath the bridge. Now this is the support paddock lane complex. Now take the inside line. It's grippier on the racing line down towards the braking zone into turn 11. A tight, acute 90-degree corner. Left again, uphill slightly to the right, and then left as you enter turn 14, very similar to Bahrain's turn 10. Accelerate now towards the 2 right-handers, sweeping through at 18 and 19. Carry as much speed as you want, and then hit the brakes hard. Be careful not to lock up on the outside left. Now, underneath the Yas Marina Hotel, full power as you approach turn 20, and don't rub the exit curb. You can lose a wheel there. We saw that back in 2010. Into the last 2 corners then. Don't run too wide at the exit here, otherwise you'll lose your lap time. But that is a lap of the Yas Marina circuit on Yas Island in Abu Dhabi. Hello everybody, welcome to Free Practice 3. So we're on here a bit late, technology issues as per usual. I'm delighted to say that joining me in the commentary box virtually is Hazel Southwell. Good morning Hazel, how are you? I'm good, thank you, yeah. Let's unmute you first so that I can hear. I can only hear you. Good morning again, how are you?
I'm very good. I'm I've never commentated on a session before in anything, so this is going to be a wholly new experience for me. And you're going to find out, given Abu Dhabi has 21 corners, just how bad I am at identifying any single one of them.
So yesterday I was convinced that turn 13 was actually turn 11. So you're in safe hands as well. But you've had more real life experience than I have in journalism, be it outside in Formula E and Formula One. So trust me, you're the more experienced of the two in the commentary box at the moment. So what have you made so far the weekend?
So I think it's very, very hard to tell anything about yesterday's running, partly because everyone was running Friday engines, or Friday power units. And actually it was the hybrid elements that were particularly biting people.
Yeah.
We saw an MG UK failure on George Russell's Williams car. We saw some funky stuff happening with Lewis Hamilton's car, but I think that's almost certainly due to them trying to cram George Russell into it, because stuff like so Lewis Hamilton in the first session, he lost 40 minutes of running to a brake problem, which is almost certainly due to the fact that George Russell is so long as a human being compared to Lewis Hamilton that he'd lost 20% of braking. Because he literally could not apply enough pressure to the brake pedal, which probably explains why Lewis thought the car was braking all the time in FP1, because it probably kind of was. But yeah, he had a few issues, but I don't think we can really worry about that. Raikkonen, Ricciardo, and Russell all had pretty serious failures. Obviously, Raikkonen's was the most dramatic because his car ended up literally on fire.
On fire, yeah.
But those were power units that was their last session. They won't get used again. They're probably the one that went in Austria, or bits of the one that went in Austria, combined with bits of later ones, and they're on their last legs.
So you're unable to tell them as well, yeah. Oh, apparently we've got no picture in the... So I think we've frozen, actually. But I think we're still commentating. You're having numerous errors. It's Abu Dhabi. We always have something going wrong in Abu Dhabi.
Well, I mean, something's got to make it interesting, haven't they?
Absolutely.
Because God help us, the racetrack really doesn't try very hard.
It doesn't. I think.
Apart from this year, it is spiced up and thrown out. Not at the front, but we don't care about the front at the moment. No. So the only battle at the front is whether Max can somehow score 16 points more than, or 17 points more than Valtteri Bottas.
Yeah, which to get that crucial second place in the drivers. Battle mainly
it's definitely not impossible. He could do it.
Yeah, and I think Bottas has had problems in both Bahrain races, and he suffered that puncture back in a couple of races ago. I think Eiffel as well, he had a dreadful race backwards. But Bottas has been off form a lot this year, mainly because I don't know what it is about Valtteri, but he seems to start really well. Austrian stereo is right there. Then mid-season, he's beginning to fall away a little bit. I think that we're back on air now, so sorry if we had an interruption with picture, but we're back on. But yeah, Bottas starts the year really well and falls out in the middle. And it's always like a curve as Lewis gets back up to it, Bottas drops off. What we saw back in Shakir with Russell and Bottas, would we have seen that of Bottas sort of having a psychological loss on the Friday to come back? Would we have seen that if it was the start of the season with Russell versus Bottas?
I think it's very hard to say. I think any time that you have your teammate absent, your normal teammate absent, there'll be sort of a different dynamic. Partly because, like, you know, Lewis and Valtteri share a lot of things. They don't have the sort of separation of the garage wall the same that Lewis and Nico had, for instance, or some teammates do. So, you know, he will have been missing Lewis in that respect, because like he's probably the great, having probably the greatest Formula One driver of all time.
Yeah.
Feedback on the other car that's identical to your car is quite handy.
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah.
So you know that will have been a factor. But also, so there was an interview with Toto where Toto Wolff, the Mercedes team boss, where he said that he thinks Valtteri drops off during a season. That when the championship's done and he's lost it.
Yeah.
Or,
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he could have won it.
Could have.
That he just kind of gives up.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to be that. That's what I brought
I
up.
don't
Yeah.
actually think it's true. Because I
yeah.
think over the years, what happens is when Lewis has won the championship, he relaxes basically.
Yeah, Lewis 2015 he did it, and then Rosberg got the advantage for 16. Yeah.
Yeah, and to be honest, you see it every year, and it's why like Max is so good at Brazil, because Lewis kind of goes like, whew.
All done, relaxed off. Yeah.
Yeah, and you sort of see these later season races where you get a bit more of a mix, so I don't think that's a fair comment about Valtteri. I think he tends to step it up once he's lost, actually.
Yeah.
But this year this year is an extraordinary year, and it's boring to say this, but everyone is so tired.
Yeah.
Everyone who works in motorsport is unbelievably tired. This weekend falls at the end of another between 30 and 60 day stint away from home for a lot of people. And for the mechanics, for the engineers, for everyone, like, it's very, very hard to keep going. And so, and you know, motorsport is a team sport.
Absolutely,
so, you know, for Valtteri, should he keep pushing his team as hard as if he was still fighting for the championship after that? Probably not, to be honest. Like, it's just not very nice. And like, they've done the teams, they've done the drivers. You know, there's nothing left to kind of harass your team about and push them to work longer and push them to work harder. Because, you know, when drivers are taking championships, and I've heard Lewis and in the championship I work in a lot, Formula E, Jev, after he won his second title, he was like, I think I've probably pushed the team too hard. Like, I've probably been too horrible, because that's where you have to be to take it.
Last race in New York, wasn't it, that one? With Jev winning the title. It was New York race 1, was it? And then he went out the next day and they lost the team's championship to Aldi. Or was that season 4?
In season 4, yes. And in season 5 they took both of them. And then in season 6 they took both of them, but it was his teammate that did the drivers. Yeah. And you know, Jev part owns Techeetah, so he has a particularly weird relationship with the team. We should probably talk about the on-track action, if there was any.
I don't think there is. I've not seen one car.
Either.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Why is no one bothering to go out? So yesterday in first practice, you had cars pretty raring to go.
Yeah.
And in second practice, you had a literal queue in the pit lane.
They were all on the development tyres, though, for the beginning half of FP2, if I'm correct.
Yes. So for during FP2, so previously when we've had a Pirelli Future tyre test, so in Portimao, there was a Pirelli 2021 tyre test where they had no idea what compound they had. And it was just the first 30 minutes of FP2 was a Pirelli tyre test, and they could only access whatever compound they had. They were given a tiny bit of information to kind of like...
The setup of the cars. Yeah.
So Pirelli are going for tyres that are designed to be more resilient, basically, to avoid blowouts like we saw with Max Verstappen at Monza. Do I mean Monza?
Imola. when he blew. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Sorry. Well, what one of the 15,000 Italian Grand Prix we've had.
I know there's been so many this year.
But yeah, so to avoid things like we saw at Monza, Imola, or with Valtteri Bottas and Carlos Sainz at Silverstone.
The last lap, the last laps.
Yeah, so in theory, the tyres should manage about the same, but they've got more. So there's lots of bits of a tyre.
Yeah.
You might look at it and be like, it's tyre. But they have belts that pull the sidewalls together. And they're basically reinforcing that. That's the structure that they're really trying to, the bit that keeps the tyre together. If you saw Lewis's tyre after he crossed the line in Silverstone and the wall was sort of pulled away, that's what they're trying to resolve. They're trying to stop, because when F1 cars corner, they
drag the tyre.
They drag the tyre. That's literally what happened. And so that's where the most stress is. So that's where they're trying to improve the resilience of the tyres. Is that the right thing to do? I've got no idea. I'm not a Formula One driver. But the Formula One drivers are very pissed off about the 2021 tyres. Even Lewis has really had a go, and he rarely goes for public feedback on something like that.
I know. Yesterday in FP2, the tweet was sent out by Pirelli revealing that it was next year's medium tyre, the C4.
It's the C4, yeah.
And Lewis went out on the C4 tyre, that is the 2020 spec, and went 1.3 seconds faster than the time he set on the 2021 development tyre. So you can see why he's a little bit annoyed that next year the cars are going to be that much slower if it's the same across the board for the whole of the compounds.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, so they say the tyres are slower. They say they're not developing in the way that they want. So it's partly that the tyres are a little bit.
Yeah.
But also these are not 2021 cars. So when you put a 2021 tyre on going for the 2020 tyres, and bear in mind that when you're designing an F1 car, you are going right down to the tyre compound and exactly how it works and everything, obviously. And, there'll be 5 engineers and 6 programmers who are involved with that. So, it's not going to work, ideally. So you shouldn't necessarily be like, oh, the cars are going to be 1.3 seconds slower because there's going to be a tyre switch, because obviously they'll design the car to work for the tyre. But it does mean, so for the drivers, they want, as we kind of saw when in Turkey when they all rubbed their inters down to slicks.
Yeah.
So they had ultra soft slicks, and they were all like, oh yeah, that's a really good tyre.
They liked it, I remember Perez and Leclerc in the press conference were like, this is the tyre that we sort of could manage. And Leclerc, after Leclerc was angry himself, obviously, for running wide at turn 13 in the last 2 corners. But that's, I was always impressed because Hamilton, I'm just hearing a team radio. That's just Magnussen, who's headed out into the track now. He's coming down into turn 11. So he's the first driver out on the track so far in this FP3 session. It's only 40 minutes of running. We'll get on to what FP3 actually means later on. Back to you, Hazel.
So Magnussen out on what he is treating as his final Grand Prix weekend.
I think it is really, isn't it? I can't see anybody wanting to pick him up when there's so much talent coming up the ranks.
I mean, he's sort of said never say never. He could end up in a Hulkenberg situation, but he's like, I'm happy if this is my last. That's it. I'm done. He's going to IMSA. He's going to a very competitive team. He's really pumped about it. He's really excited about the idea of winning again.
He'll take part in Daytona, won't he, in end of January?
Daytona's his first race. And to be honest, I really like Kevin. I used to work with him years and years ago.
Oh, yeah.
He's a really nice guy who has a really fast driver, a really hard-working driver, but who, there is a reason that Jenson Button took a massive pay cut to keep him
Yeah.
as the reserve driver at McLaren, which is that Kevin is genuinely like a good lad. And I don't know if he's necessarily been able to show it in Formula One, but I'm really excited for him getting to show it in sports cars. I really love sports car racing, and I think it will give him a new lease on life to be in that environment. I'm sure he could have done more in Formula One, but also I think he doesn't have to. There's nothing left to prove. Everyone in the industry knows how good he is.
Podium on his debut in Australia 2014 was proof enough that he is a quick driver. And up until Brazil last year, him and Button's podium was the last for McLaren, right at the beginning of the hybrid era. Magnussen is on a lap time, but Latifi has gone quickest, 1:39.812. That's miles off the pace at the moment, what we're going to see at the end of this session.
He has also had his lap time deleted.
Oh, good point. Yeah, I didn't spot that. Yep, lap time deleted on the board.
So let's talk about lap time deletions. So there's two places where track limits are being enforced, which is turn 20 and 21. So 21 is, of course, the final corner, which we should see Magnussen coming into sooner or later.
I don't know if you're a bit behind on your monitor. He's just crossed the line, actually. He's just crossed the line.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, I must be... no, I am. Sorry, I'm about 2 seconds behind you.
It's okay.
But anyway, the final corner at Abu Dhabi, there's the ability to run a little bit wide.
Very easily, yeah.
It's a bit of a Paul Ricard corner in the paint kind of just defines exactly where the corner is. And if you run wide on it, then the race director's notes were updated after second practice yesterday.
Yeah, I've got them in front of me as well, yeah.
To say that if you run wide 3 times, so every time you run wide, your team will be notified and they'll get an indication or whatever, so that your engineer can be like, oi, stop it. And if you run wide 3 times, you'll get a black and white flag. If you do it again after that, then you will potentially be sent to the stewards. It's very unlikely you'd be sent to the stewards over free practice because no one cares.
No, last one as well.
You will also obviously get your lap time deleted, which again in free practice no one cares, but in quali people do.
Russell's just complaining about turn 5, I think, on the radio that I was just listening to.
What?
Yeah.
What was his complaint?
I think it was about that he was having some oversteer to turn 5. If I could just hear it again, because we're not having. It's oversteer through 5.
Which one is turn 5 in Abu Dhabi?
That's it's the chicane section just before the hairpin at 7. So it's 5 and 6, the S chicane, before the long back straightaway.
Oh, okay, yeah. Which actually, so
that's easy really to oversteer as well, because you're on, as you were talking about earlier with the tyres, you're unloading them to the rear. I do feel a bit sorry for George, because he's gone from the fastest car to what is arguably the slowest, as we just see Esteban Ocon having a little bit of puff of blue smoke from the back of the Renault engine. Now, we mentioned earlier, they're now on their race engines, and let's just hope it's just an oil puffing at the back.
Quali engines.
Yeah, the quali.
Probably.
Yeah.
So some of them may still be on a practice engine. As we saw last weekend, you can switch the whole power unit between FP3 and quali, as Ferrari did with Vettel.
Very impressive.
Unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, these things. This is a very trivial way of saying it. I used to work for a power unit manufacturer, and this is not as simple as it sounds.
Yeah.
But you can pretty much, if you're planning to, you can pretty much take them out and dump them in.
Oh, wow.
And it will probably be, even if it's most of the Saturday engine, it might be, or most of the Saturday power unit, it might be an old battery, it might be an old MGUK in particular. So MGUK is, sorry, this is my specialist area, so I'm going to get
yours.
But MGUK is what regenerates energy from the brakes and ultimately delivers power from the hybrid system. So it's not the thing that recovers energy from the exhaust, which is the MGUH, but it is the majority of the hybrid system it does a lot of the work of the hybrid system.
The kinetic, the kinetic unit was what failed on George Russell's car yesterday, just before Raikkonen's fight.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you might be like, well, I mean, it's basically like a smaller and much posher version of a Formula E powertrain. So it is a powertrain. It's what an electric vehicle has in it. In that it takes power from the battery or drives power to the battery from the brakes under regeneration. And obviously it doesn't do all of it in a Formula One car because it's got the ICE as well. But it's like a dinky Formula E powertrain, basically. Apart from in Formula One, there's no cost cap on them, so
because
you can just use you can make the whole thing out of gold if you really want.
I think Ferrari might have done that. It might explain why they're a bit heavy this year. Although we all know it's the oil issue that was rumoured to be the oil pressure issue from last year, we have to say. Even though it's the worst kept secret in Formula One, what Ferrari were doing. Yeah.
But the FIA can't reveal it.
I know, how bizarre. Albon's just gone quickest to 1:37.536. Hamilton's jumped to second. Now Norris is third, but he's out there on the medium compound tyre.
So Norris has been really fast this weekend. He likes this track. He and Sainz are neck and neck in the qualifying battle
once again.
But also, so are, and I bet this will surprise some people, Raikkonen and Giovinazzi.
Are they really? I didn't even know that one.
Yeah.
Are they level?
They're neck and neck. And they're on the same points. They both have 4 points.
I knew they were on the same points, but I didn't realise they're that close in terms of out-qualifying each other.
Yeah, no, because I think a lot of people kind of, Antonio pretty much keeps to himself.
He does, a lot, yeah.
Apart from doing the odd kind of like staggeringly hipster fashion shoot where you're like, grief, Antonio.
Yeah, I completely get it.
But like, he's mostly a little bit of like a quiet boy. A quiet boy, that is, not a choir boy. That would be weird.
That's what you were saying. Yeah.
Sorry, I've got a glottal stop. I can't speak English really. But yeah, he is matching Raikkonen, and I think people really underestimate how badly the Ferrari powered lower teams are, because we've seen Ferrari disappear this year.
I think I mentioned in the commentary Imola. Imola,
they're in a fight with with
AlphaTauri, yeah.
But the artist formerly known as Toro Rosso.
Yeah. Well put.
For who can be the fastest. I mean,
yeah.
Well, I mean, AlphaTauri have won more races than them this year.
I think
and had more podiums, I think.
Yep, AlphaTauri.
No, not quite. No, sorry, I forgot about Seb.
Yeah, Seb's podium in Turkey, which I think everybody forgets about, even though it was probably one of the most do or die moves on his own teammate. Verstappen has gone fastest to 1:37.175, so he's carrying on that performance he did in practice 1 of topping the day practice sessions. Albon goes second, Hamilton third, Norris and Leclerc round out the top 5. What's surprising me at the moment is if you look further down, Latifi and Russell, 13th and 14th, are still battling with Raikkonen's just jumped up to 14th, but Magnussen as well, quicker. We're in for a very interesting qualifying 2, where the Williams actually around this track seems to be having a little bit more pace than as we were talking about the Ferrari engines.
Which is kind of interesting because both Latifi and Russell said that their car is not suited to this track yesterday.
Really?
Yeah, so they both said this is just not a track for us. We're mostly doing 2021 stuff on the Friday, which a lot of teams are. Mercedes openly. So Lewis was like, oh yeah, I had to come back to my car and, you know, someone's been sitting in it and the seat's not quite right. And I didn't get through all my 2021 running. And it's just like, oh, Lewis, stop it.
I know.
And like, I love him to pieces. And I really do think he is the greatest driver of all time. But at the same time, it's like, Lewis, could you just stop being so good and so on top of everything?
I know, it's a bit like,
stop complaining about not getting all your 2021 running done.
We've got
Anyway,
we've got a yellow on the track, Hazel, and I think we've just gone green now, but I think it was just a run wide at some point, so I think we might be okay with that one.
I think it was Raikkonen.
Yeah, Raikkonen is 60 seconds in the second sector. You're right. It's Raikkonen who's gone a bit off. Sainz is on a lap time. His first of the session, actually.
I think he went off between 7 and 8, which actually has been a bit of a popular
this weekend.
So this weekend there's quite a lot of gusty wind in Abu Dhabi. So although the weather doesn't change a huge amount between November and December, it is winter in Abu Dhabi. It's a lot hotter than, you know, St. Petersburg, but, or Edinburgh, or I don't know where you are actually.
I'm in Grimsby. Yeah, so right on the coast.
Grimsby.
Yeah,
I'll give you that.
I walked down, there was fog this morning, so
yeah, and it's a lot hotter than East London as well, which is where I am. I say East London.
Essex.
Anyway, yeah. So although there hasn't been a huge temperature change, so it's about 26, 27 ambient temperature, and it will be pretty much all the time for all the sessions. The track temperature is still very high because it's very sunny, so the tarmac's absorbing heat. So the track temperature is actually the highest it's been for several races. It's well into the 30s.
36 at the moment, looking at the monitor.
Yeah, it was 39 for FP1 and 32 for FP2. So, you know, but we're looking at a warm track. A track that hasn't seen very much running, but a warm track.
Yeah.
And
you were talking about the McLarens being level on the qualifying, on the graphic now on the commentary monitor. Qualifying 8.1 is their season average. Race pace, Sainz is 7.6 to Norris is 7.3. And just again, we've got another yellow on the track. As in overtakes, they're pretty much level at 7.6 as well. But work being done at the back of Lando Norris's car, a whole team of mechanics just looking, and I think the engine cover might be coming off. No, they've stopped and they've screwed it back on. But there's something wrong, I think, at the rear suspension. Are you seeing this?
Yes, so I don't think that's the rear suspension. I would guess that it's the brakes, basically. It's the regen system. I think.
The regen system, we just lost you a little bit.
They're poking around. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to do with the regenerative system and the brakes. I don't know for sure.
That's the problem with being off-site. You can't get anyone to go down and have a look.
Well, I mean, they will definitely not let you look at the regen system at the back, I'm afraid.
They're all secretive.
So I sometimes get a bit of clemency. So despite being a tech journalist, people tend to forget that I am one because I'm a blonde woman, not a bloke with the camera.
Yeah.
So I do tend to get to see quite a lot of stuff, but I guarantee that they would not let you see the back of the car with the engine cover off. But
I know even FOM have to take away with the camera angles.
From where I think they're poking, I think it's the brakes. It's probably therefore not very serious.
Yeah, if it's
like that saying it's the brakes sounds really terminal. The suspension is much worse.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Your suspension as well. That's the whole rebuild of the rear end going into qualifying, because
could be. Yeah.
Verstappen just crosses the line, improves on his time of 1:36.734. Norris is down in fifth in the championship, fifth in the standings at the moment. only run on the mediums. Stroll, the only other to do that. He's 14th on a 1:38.577. We have several of the cars out, pretty well spaced as well. I don't know if you've got a driver tracker where you're watching from.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
They're all pretty much spaced out, but bar Giovinazzi, Albon and Hamilton, who are all around the hotel section.
So the times are much slower than last session.
Yeah, that's understandable.
They're about a second back overall. But I think it's worth noting that the Red Bulls and the Mercedes are much closer. So the Red Bulls and the Mercedes were within a second of each other. So Albon in fourth from FP2 was just within a second back of Bottas in first in FP2. FP2 was a bit of a joke in the sense that you didn't quite get a real feel for running because of the Pirelli tyre test, because of lots of things.
And then the red flag stopped the long runs of the race.
Red flag at the point where a lot of them were getting into their long runs and and also it's practice, so like who knows?
Good point. No one can
teams
ever tell.
Are not giving away anything at that point.
Yeah.
Even at this stage in the season, you know, there's stuff to play for.
Third in the constructors, for instance.
Yes. Which, my God, so
Close.
Carlos Sainz after the end of the last Grand Prix at Sakir was like, I can't believe Racing Point have not sewn this up.
I know. Best car
I completely understand it because he's probably bored of it. I'm bored of it. I've written in the talking points that we do for race fans, I have written third in the constructors for 7 consecutive Grand Prix.
Oh, God. You had fun, though, in Bahrain because McLaren did take over briefly. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it keeps going back and forth.
Yeah.
You know, Renault took it after the last Italian Grand Prix. Turkish Grand Prix. And then McLaren took it, and then Racing Point are now in the lead. And you know, it is really tight. It's still separated by less than 25 points.
Yep, and 10 points between McLaren and Racing Point.
Yeah. So it really is worth it. George Russell, having comprehensively bodied Valtteri Bottas as a racing driver yesterday, or last week, is now coming for my job.
Really?
In that he turned analyst, our jobs.
Good point.
He turned analyst yesterday after the race and said that, the midfield is very tight. There's that battle for P3 and Carlos Sainz doesn't care if it is leaving, so he doesn't care if he bashes up his car.
Oh, God, that's a good point.
Is leaving, so he doesn't care if he bashes up his car. And Sergio Perez is leaving, so he doesn't care if he bashes up his car. And that's a quote.
My word. Yeah.
So he was like, so it's going to be a good one.
I'm looking forward to that more on Sunday than the front, actually. That battle for third will be the talking point of the race. And I can't... Last time I did Shakir, we'll get on that. I cannot remember the last time... I know we had Monza, but I cannot remember the last time that we had a situation where we've got it was the battle for third in the Constructors' Championship only, because we had Racing Point taking the podium, Renault were second, McLaren were up there in fourth and fifth. When was the last time that the top two in the Constructors just weren't battling for the constructor? I cannot remember a time where the race shifted so much. And I can't.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I think some of it is a function of the season. Mercedes are tired, Red Bull are tired.
Yeah.
Like, they've done what they have to. Red Bull have sealed second. That's as much as they can do. Verstappen's side of the garage will still be trying to take second in the drivers from Bottas, but I mean, ultimately, who cares? Like at this point, if it's the difference between an hour of sleep and 2 hours of sleep, probably who cares?
Yeah, who's going to go where?
And I say this as a really, really competitive person, and as somebody who obviously works in motorsport and has worked for teams, and and you will drive yourself to the point of like absolute collapse. But I mean, I think teams have reached that point and beyond.
Yeah,
Like,
they've pushed it. What was it? 5 months, 17 races, as you said earlier, 60 days away from home.
I honestly think, you know, what we saw last weekend with Mercedes making errors.
Yeah.
It's because everyone's so tired. And like it sounds really sort of stupid to say this almost, but I cannot describe how tired people are. Like even me as a journalist, I have worked 17-hour days for the last 4 weeks straight.
Blimey, that is yeah. It hits, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I had Formula E testing in the middle and stuff, but like, it's very difficult to say the effect, and particularly when you're traveling, and particularly with the COVID restrictions, because traveling used to be a bit of the fun bit.
Yeah, I got that.
You know,
yeah.
you get a bit of the travel, you get to go and see somewhere. Traveling is now, you need to schedule your COVID test, you need to make sure that you've done certain things. Like I used to describe my hobbies and interests as getting like extraordinarily lit on flights, on white wine.
Yes,
but,
yeah.
You know, it's a fun bit of it, and it's like, you know, you're going to be on this flight for 14 hours, you might as well enjoy it.
Completely agree, yeah.
But that is not what anyone is doing anymore. And it's, you know, you're in a hotel, you have to stay in that hotel, you have to not go anywhere, you have to not do things, you're no longer kind of, all of the perks of it are gone. Obviously, it's still a huge privilege to be at the racetrack. It's super exciting, and it's a really wonderful industry to work in, and everyone's really great. And you know, we're all very, very excited to be there. I don't want to lessen that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like all of the things that might have kind of perked you up when you're really tired are
gone. Yeah.
Not there anymore, and you're still really tired. So like, yeah, I really, really feel for the pit crews, for the engineers, for everybody who is out there. You know, we see the drivers' names, but we don't see the names.
Yeah.
And you know, we know about Bono and a couple of the engineers, but like really, most of the teams are a little bit anonymous.
I was watching back as well, to touch on that. I was watching an ITV coverage from about 2004, 2005, and they did a behind-the-scenes feature with every team throughout the season. I cannot believe, I know this year we've had the COVID pandemic, so you can't, but I cannot believe we don't see more of the team. I mean, we've got Sky Sports F1 in the UK. That channel this year has only been live on the weekends. I mean, we could have features throughout, going through teams and teams and meeting everybody. Formula One's more of a family than it is just these drivers, these team principals, as you were saying. It's all aspects.
I mean, it's really easy to criticise Sky, but they do have the biggest budget by far, the most access by far, and an entire channel which is dedicated to Formula One content.
I know.
Which they could put any kind of Formula One content out on. And I have a huge problem with the way that they present it. There's things like, if you look back on, so pre-COVID, they had the McLaren drivers for a day of filming.
Yeah, with testing.
And they filmed that horrible, weird crotch cam.
Oh, yeah, with the milk.
Thing.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, which I think is one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, 2 seconds. Sorry to interrupt, but we've got Red Bull mechanics standing on the front end of one of the, I think that was Verstappen's car. Yeah, because Verstappen's in the pit lane. And
yeah, it is Verstappen.
Yeah, you're the technical delegate here, Hazel. What did you make of that? Was that just trying to get into the, it looked like where the pedals were mainly, because the little box was off at the top.
It's Alex's car.
Is it Alex? Oh, right.
Yeah, it is Alex's car. So I think what they're doing. So that bit
Yeah.
of the front of Formula One car. So basically, once you take off the front wing, there's behind it in every single City race car, and including Formula One cars, there's basically 2 oil bottles, and that's almost all you can see. I don't think it's something that they're adjusting on the front. I think it's something in the monocoque, but I'm not sure what.
We need another look at that, I think, to have a look, because it was
I mean,
yeah,
it's impossible to tell basically because it's being rugby scrummed by all
yeah,
of them, and that's why they're doing it, because they know there's a camera.
yeah.
So they're both doing something and they're hiding it. I don't know what they're doing, but they're changing something within the monocoque itself. It might even be the steering wheel.
Yeah. Well, we saw Mercedes yesterday do a hot change, didn't they, with moving it over. And that's more difficult than it looks, as I said in the commentary in FP2, because you have to have every single switch in exactly the same position as the first steering wheel, or the whole system doesn't load up and doesn't crash. So it's a bit more technical.
Well, and also like drivers, I mean, like we saw with Russell last weekend, like, so I have tiny, tiny hands compared to most people. George Russell has, I have to wear kid-sized gloves. George Russell presumably has considerably bigger hands. And I know that Lewis does. And, you know, just to get things exactly where you want them on the steering wheel for a start, because Lewis does this weird thing where he starts with his arm over the top.
I saw, yeah, where he just holds the back of it, and I think we saw, didn't we? There's a button just behind.
So, I mean, I completely get it, because normally that is turn 1.
Yeah, just pushing down, yeah.
On a clockwise circuit, that's turn 1. So I get why you would have your left hand kind of on the top of the steering wheel. But yeah, George was having to deal with Lewis's extremely idiosyncratic steering wheel.
Yeah. You might like to know, Russell's just gone fastest of all in the first sector, and it surprised everybody at 17.274. I think he's on the softs. Yes, he is.
That is fast. And right, so let's talk about the corners in that first sector.
Yeah, it's turn 1.
Oh, I'm trying to be a better commentator and not like turning up for. Right, so those corners are obviously there's the long. There's a bit off the straight, and then you've got the pretty much right angle.
Acute 90-degree, turn 1.
Of turn 1.
And then that leads down through.
Followed by the heavily flowing sector. So this is the most flowing bit of the track. It's probably the highest speed bit of overall.
Yeah.
Bar the long straight between 7. Well, no, actually, no. Sector 2 is probably faster just because it's got no corners in it.
Yeah, sector 2, that long sweep back. Yeah. Through, I think, what is it?
Yeah. I mean, it's just 2 straights with a
little bit of a curve. Yeah.
God, this track is just so dire, isn't it?
I know.
It looks like, and I say this with great love, but it does look like a Formula E circuit.
I was going to bring that up.
Scale.
Yeah, it does look Formula E.
And obviously I love Formula E, and I think our circuits are actually good. They produce a different sort of race, but that's fine because it's different sort of racing.
Always close as well.
You know, same as Formula E cars are not Grand Prix cars.
Yeah.
You know, if you were to design an electric Grand Prix car, it would not look like a Formula E car.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I want to just.
I mean,
yeah.
Who has anything nice to say about Abu Dhabi? For God's sake, I mean, local racing series do not use Abu Dhabi over, say, like Dubai Autodrome, which is a great circuit, and which
I
we
love.
went to.
Yeah. I'm surprised we haven't switched. To be fair, although the problem is with Dubai Autodrome, not got the pit facilities. I don't think to host Formula One. I think now they've
No,
yeah.
no, and neither does oh
Which is the
God,
other one?
the Qatar circuit.
Oh,
That's
Qatar, yeah.
actually really cool.
That does
Um,
MotoGP, doesn't it? Yeah.
yeah, uh, yeah, I've forgotten the name. Some,
You're
but
right.
yeah,
Losail
uh,
circuit.
oh, Losail, yeah,
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 yeah, yeah. Uh, so I watch a lot of GT racing that happens in just the Arab world.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, there's a few really good circuits, but they just don't quite have. And this is kind of a thing that's been interesting this year, because of course we've had a different calendar for Formula One
Yeah.
because fans haven't been allowed. So it doesn't matter that Imola doesn't have enough stands and capacity and roads into it and whatever
Yeah.
for fans.
It's completely just, it was there for a historical factor, really, wasn't it? Mainly just to get up to the 17.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's that Formula One could get it for cheap. So
Yeah,
rather
yeah.
than collecting extortionate race fees, they have mostly been paying to go to circuits.
That's the only reason
Uh,
Portugal happened as well, really, isn't it? Because
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, because they paid 40 mil to go there.
yeah.
Because they needed somewhere that was still hot. It was between Portimao and they nearly tried to get Marrakesh to get the street circuit
I don't
up
think that would have
to Formula
worked.
One standards, which would have been no.
Yeah.
But that would have been the first time that Formula One had run on a Formula E track, and that would have been really funny.
I know. Oh, you've got your wish though, because isn't Monaco next year for Formula E the same track as Formula One? Because I think they changed it, didn't they, for season 7?
So in theory, we will run the full Monaco circuit next year. But at the moment, Monaco is not confirmed on the calendar.
Yeah, that's right, because they've changed, haven't they? Because we were supposed to kick off in
Yeah,
Saudi Arabia, and now we've kicked off in.
we only have the first 2 rounds confirmed.
Yeah, and they're double headers as well, which is
So
delightful.
in theory, the next time we go to Monaco, we will run the full Grand Prix circuit. I think there's a lot of people who are like, "Ah, Formula E is going to be so slow."
No.
No, Formula
Yeah.
E is going to make Formula One look like a complete fanny round there.
Yeah.
Because Formula E cars go 4 wide round the hairpin.
I
Formula One
saw, yeah.
cars can only just get round the hairpin.
I know. I said in the comment. I said,
So
when was the last Monaco one? Was it season 5? It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
remember doing the commentary, the own commentary that I do here, and I said as well, I've never enjoyed a Monaco race more than I have this Formula E, and they won the short track down JFK Avenue into the hairpin. I thought, wow, let's get this on the full circuit. I was a bit annoyed that Jean Todt sort of vetoed it for season 5 because I thought that would have been amazing.
To be fair, it wasn't Jean Todt that vetoed it. It was we didn't want to pay to use the Grand Prix circuit.
Right, yeah, because I only saw the reports going out. Yeah.
Basically, so when Alejandro was in charge, I agree with Alejandro on both of these fronts.
Yeah.
We refused to pay the FIA to be a world championship. We qualified as a world championship, but we refused to just pay them the extra 100,000 or whatever. It's just additional money to be a world championship. So we refused to pay it, and then we refused to pay for the Monaco Grand Prix circuit.
Oh, I think we just lost you on that last bit.
Oh, sorry.
I think you're thinking back now, yeah.
So yeah, we refused to pay the Monaco Grand Prix. Have to build it to Formula One standards.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's Formula One track, which we wouldn't normally. Formula E tracks, you build them in a day. They cool down in a day. They're very different design circuits. Lower speed cars, no fuel, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have now agreed to pay to use the Monaco Grand Prix circuit, and we have agreed to pay to be a world championship. Does it really matter? No, not really. But no. I also think it will make Formula One look stupid around Monaco, because Formula E will have a really good fight around Monaco, and I think people really underestimate which way it will go, because to be honest, no one can tell how fast cars are because they look so stable, whereas Formula E cars are going to like rally cross it, like slide sideways through every corner. They'll be slipping past each other, going over the top of each other. Like, it's going to be very dramatic.
I cannot wait for it. Yeah.
I noticed that the Renaults are in second and third.
Yep, Ricciardo's up there with Ocon.
They are slightly more representative times now. We're into the 136s, which is more roughly where we should be looking at.
Definitely sort of Q1 area times.
Yeah, and Ricciardo is only
10th off of Verstappen,
just short of a 10th and a half back of Verstappen. I mean, obviously the Mercedes are sandbagging.
Yeah, because nowhere are they 5th and 8th.
None of this serious. Yeah.
I did notice that on that lap time we were talking about with Russell, he briefly went up to 7th, but now everyone's out there on the faster times. He's dropped down to 14th, which is heartbreaking. But hopefully next year winners or something.
I mean, we would all love for someone to put a rocket up the back of the Williams somehow, but at the end of the day, it is what it is as a car.
Perez
we
just
know
10th.
How good Russell is, and we know he's getting the absolute maximum out of it, and that's all you can say.
A lot of people have been asking me, are they going to switch Bottas and Russell around for 2021? I can't see it happening, but we've had crazier things this year across all of motorsport, in Formula E, MotoGP, Formula 1, F2 even. We've had completely crazy seasons, so I wouldn't say it's out of the realms of possibility, but that contract is there.
I don't think they're Red Bull. I don't think they play that way.
Wouldn't, no. Red Bull, on the other hand, with Albon.
They will honour Valtteri's contract until the end of 2021.
Lewis hasn't signed.
There is no reason whatsoever for them to think that it would be better in the teams or drivers' championship to have Russell in the car.
Because that would just be another Rosberg-Hamilton situation where they're just going to constantly keep battling with each other. And
I don't think it would be. I think for a lot of reasons. For instance, I don't think Mercedes would ever. Mercedes cultured that, and I don't think they will ever do it again.
Yeah.
I think they realise quite how badly they screwed up there. It did make the team competitive. It did drive them forward, but
separated the garage completely.
At what cost?
Yeah. I drove Rosberg.
And,
Sorry, what?
Well, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm best friends with Lewis and Nico, but I kind of do know them, and good me, they were very broken by the end of 2016.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I know their relationship is sort of. I don't know how to describe their relationship at the moment, because they went from friends to frenemies to rivals, and now they've sort of relaxed a little bit more. So their relationship's sort of changing a little bit. I mean, I know Sky a couple of years ago had it.
I mean, I would say they never stopped being friends.
Really?
It became very political.
Yeah. Strain. Yeah.
So they live about 40 foot from each other.
I know.
Monaco.
Yeah. Always bring that up as well. Yeah.
And I don't think they ever stopped speaking to each other or anything.
I'm sort of hoping that they sort of still get together and sort of just chat away from all the media and speculation. Monaco, we know a lot of what happens in Monaco with the drivers, but they are incredibly personal away from the circuit a lot. And that's what I've found as well with some of them. I mean, Formula E I know is a lot closer, I would say, than Formula 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's very weird because, the human population density in Monaco is higher than emperor penguins in the Antarctic. and they all, like basically sleep on top of each other for warmth. Um, so yeah, you kind of can't avoid each other.
Yeah.
Uh, Especially because there's one supermarket.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, yeah.
um,
Although I read a story that Fernando Alonso had never
so
been to
yeah,
a
it
supermarket.
kind of
Yeah.
it's just it's a very funny place in that respect. So like you will end up hanging out with. I mean, it's a little bit like I joke about this with London,
Mm.
that like everybody knows each other and there's only 600 real people. There only are about 600 people in Monaco.
Mm.
So,
It's always the same, isn't
um,
it? It's
mm,
always. Oh, checkered flags come out as well. So that's it.
mm.
That hour's flown by for the session. So yeah,
I think we've got to give some rare kudos to Alex Albon.
I was about to say as well, he's second fastest, and yes, he's 5/10 off, but this is not really what we're going to see in quali, but that's great from Albon. I mean, I'm sort of annoyed as well. Was it last time out or Bahrain? So it's either Shakir or Bahrain that he was ahead of Verstappen, and then it was only the last lap that they swapped positions. And I was really annoyed at that because I thought he's going to finish ahead of him. I think it was Bahrain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bahrain,
Because it must have been Bahrain because
rather than
because Verstappen was out of the race in Shakir.
yeah.
They all
Um,
merged into one.
Yeah, I mean, Albon has the impossible job. It's really hard to be. Basically, Red Bull screwed up. They took their experienced driver out of the program when they sold Sainz off to get rid of their Renault
Yeah.
engines or Renault power unit. God, I'm going to shoot myself if I say engines again. But yeah, when they sold Sainz off rather than keeping him to promote to the top team, they knew they had a problem in that they couldn't put Sainz and Verstappen back together in a team after their time in Toro Rosso.
Yeah.
Which was explosive. And I
remember,
think
yeah.
because at the time they were both kind of junior drivers in Toro Rosso with an old power unit and whatever, no one really kind of paid that much attention. But it was fiery. And so they decided they could not put Sainz and Verstappen in the same team. And Sainz was the casualty from that. And so the talent they had nurturing to pair Verstappen, they lost, and they didn't have anything to replace it.
Tsunoda coming in though.
Gasly
finally
was meant to be the talent.
Yeah. Oh, I think we've lost. Are you there? Oh, there we go. So
yeah,
we lost you again.
And yeah.
Lovely. Yes.
Sorry.
Got you. Yep. All good.
I love Tsunoda. He's so I have to say about some of the power unit manufacturers.
Yes,
and he was somebody who I used to follow, trying not to break my NDA. But he's a brilliant driver. He's done so well in Formula 2 this year. His rookie year, and he's terrific talent. I think it will be really exciting if he makes it to Formula 1.
I agree. Completely.
It's basically done. Kvyat
it's done and signed. Yeah.
Accepts that he's gone. Yuki will be taking that seat alongside Pierre.
Albon's got another 6 months.
Yeah, and AlphaTauri are a really exciting team at the moment because they're sharing so many Red Bull, and because this will be Honda's final season.
Yeah.
Next year. Now, Honda are, as a company, intensely loyal to a literal fault. They will screw things up for themselves out of loyalty. And they are much more loyal to Pierre and Yuki, and specifically to AlphaTauri as the team that took them after McLaren and that
Lost
were
them, yeah,
nice
yeah.
to them after the horrible, horrible situation at McLaren. Whereas Toro Rosso were grateful for the power units and were keen to work with them.
Yeah.
They will. I'm not saying that they're going to give AlphaTauri better parts than Red Bull. They obviously are not going to do that. Aside from anything else, that would be against the regulations.
Yeah. Got to be the same
but they will
parts.
do everything in their power to help AlphaTauri. I think it might be a bit of a swan song, but next season will be very exciting for what happens there.
It's going to be fantastic.
And particularly for Gasly.
Yeah, Gasly's. Yeah.
Because he's, astronomical.
Do you think that we could have Gasly back by 2022 into the Red Bull team? Yeah. Yes, yeah. No.
Gasly will never be put back in the Red Bull.
I think I'd agree with that, actually. I just wanted to throw that out there. Because the way they treated him was... I think that's abysmal for what happened there. And I'm glad that the Red Bull sort of started to listen as well. We talked about this yesterday in practice too. They've sort of started to listen to the fact that, oh, hang on a minute, it's not the driver, it is actually the car, that it's too set up for Verstappen. So and we've seen it that... there was a quote somewhere, I think you might have actually got it, the fact that Verstappen likes the oversteer, but Albon doesn't on the car setup. He was complaining about it, I think, in this session.
So I think something that's really interesting is Albon has said he likes the most loose setup.
Yeah.
And he's never, ever, ever had a teammate who prefers a loose setup. So he is probably the driver with the driving style closest that you could get to Verstappen. He doesn't have the experience. Verstappen has been in Formula One since 2015.
Yeah.
This is his 6th season.
I know, you can't imagine it,
this
can you?
This is Albon's 2nd.
Yeah, and yet it always gets me because Albon's older than Verstappen, but Verstappen came in because of all of that situation with Kvyat. It just gets me that they don't seem to treat, as you were saying as well, they don't seem to treat him much with like, oh yeah, just the second driver. I get a feeling of Schumacher Barrichello syndrome. He's just there to make Verstappen look good, and when Verstappen fails, like what happened in Shakir, Albon's there to get the points.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I think Red Bull have been compensated. They've had 3 dog cars, like 3 really bad. Like realistically, the AlphaTauri should be nowhere near the Red Bull, and it frequently is.
Yeah.
And AlphaTauri have won the same number of races.
I know.
Red Bull, this year. So I think, Verstappen is without question a very, very, very good driver.
Yeah.
And he's also very embedded in the team. He's been there a long time. It is a little bit crafted around him. But so actually, if you look at the same timeline, you have Mitch Evans in Formula E. So he is unquestionably a very, very good driver who moved to Jaguar in season 3, roughly around the same time that Kvyat and Verstappen was swapped.
Yeah, season 3, 2015, 16, yeah.
And I know because I also got demoted by Red Bull.
Oh God. All change.
A different Red Bull and in a different context, but I was still like, wow.
Yeah.
So Mitch Evans has been with Jaguar for the same time that Verstappen has been with Red Bull. Mitch, yes, he has an advantage in the team. So he's always comprehensively pasted his teammates.
Yeah.
The closest anyone got to him was season 4 when Nelson Piquet Jr. didn't get completely wiped out by him. But it was like not getting pasted, not even coming close to beating him.
Yeah.
And comparatively, Verstappen actually has had it taken to him by teammates.
Ricardo did it, and Sainz. Yeah, Sainz and Ricardo.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, Sainz beat him in the first year, I think.
2015. Yeah.
And they, you know, Verstappen is a good driver. I think people have this tendency to sort of mythologize Verstappen. And there's a lot of sort of very weird stuff that people talk about with Verstappen. Like they talk about his father, they talk about almost like a destiny thing, like he's Harry Potter of Formula One or something. Like he's the chosen special one. And I mean it's super screwed up and really weird, and I wish people wouldn't do it.
I completely agree with that. Yeah.
Also, it's very strange how much people overestimate Verstappen's stuff, whilst not talking about the fact that he is just really good technically as a driver, and he has improved so much over the course of his time in Formula One. He stopped making stupid errors. So Leclerc last weekend in Sakhir screwed up and biffed Verstappen out the race. And he said afterwards, or he said the couple of days on Thursday of this week, that he was like, oh well, the thing is that didn't work out. I shouldn't have done it, but this is how I've got so many points this year, by making these risky moves on turn 1. Which is a very Verstappen 3 years ago quote.
That was,
and he no longer makes those stupid choices. He no longer does that. He's got the race strategy. He's got it. He's craft. And you can now look at Verstappen and Hamilton and compare what they're doing in races, and look at the way that they're managing things. Obviously, they're driving different cars, and there's different factors involved. But you can definitely begin to compare them on who is trying to get the edge where level, on a way that 4 years ago, no way on earth you could have. It was just that Verstappen had a fast car.
Yeah, and
Lewis and Nico were messy as fuck.
That's the only reason as well. No, don't worry. It's the only reason that he never. It was sort of, as you said, they've all treated him like the Harry Potter. It didn't help that in his first race for Red Bull he won. I don't think that helped him. It was fairy tale, but I don't think it helped, because it gave him the, oh hello, I'm quite good at this. That's what I got, because in the very next race he went for the move at, where was the next race after? Monaco, wasn't it? And he binned it in the wall in FP3. And he wrecked the weekend, and he's always had that problem with Monaco.
And he binned it in the wall in the race. Yeah,
the top of the hill.
Monaco has never been a good track for Verstappen.
I think 15 he crashed into the Sainte Devote. 16 he binned it twice. 17 he binned it in the same place as the 16, and then he had to start at the back of the grid. 18, I think he again crashed, didn't he? Just coming into the swimming pool. Oh, yeah, he's never had a good race. Yeah, maybe Verstappen should not race at Monaco.
He's also never had a good race there in Junior Series.
Did he? Oh, yeah.
He doesn't really like street circuits. He's mucked up in Singapore a lot as well.
Ferrari blamed him for turn 1.
Yeah, I mean, he'd have a horrible time in Formula E.
Oh, I think I'd enjoy him. Yeah.
Although I am really keen, and No, I'm not going to say that actually. Um,
Oh.
the Mercedes Formula E team are testing the Formula One car next
Van
weekend.
Dorn and De Vries. Yeah.
Or next week. So I'm full campaigning for the Mercedes Formula One team to test the Formula E car
I saw your tweet. Yeah.
in our in-season test. And it's not impossible, is what I say.
Yeah.
Um, uh, it would be a heck of a thing.
But then again, we got to
Uh,
think about COVID bubbles. If it's still around when the in-season test comes around for Formula E, would they be allowed in?
yes, but
Ah,
people who are very would be ideal. Um, Rather than bringing in outsider people.
mm.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we'll get George Russell. Let's see.
Russell might do it. I think Russell will do it. Russell will go. I think. Yeah, Russell and actually, who's your ideal lineup then in Formula E at the moment? Let's switch formula. Who would you say going into season 7? They've got a good chance because you were at pre-season testing in Valencia. I couldn't get out.
I mean, it's just impossible to ignore the fact that Jev and Da Costa are the two champions.
Yeah,
There has never been a team where both of their drivers are champions before, and there's never been a team that has been so dominant. Techeetah have worked out Formula E. So Formula E as a concept is very, very different from Formula One. Everything to do with efficiency and performance is not really the same as Formula One at all. So in Formula One, you need tyres to work, you need to get the tyres to last, you need to be able to do, all kinds of things with aero. In Formula E, none of those things exist.
Yeah.
There is no aero. It's a spec chassis. There is no tyres. We only have one pair of one tyres, so you can change 2 tyres
yeah.
over a race day.
Are they Goodyear this
and
year?
They're
Hannock.
they're ridged Michelin still.
Right, still Michelin's.
They're inters basically.
Yeah.
They run on street circuits, so there's paint, there's bus stops, there's garbage,
Yeah.
there's it's not a racetrack. It's not a controlled surface. You cannot model it in simulation most of the time. But Techeetah are just that team in the way that Mercedes are in Formula One. So Mercedes invented DAS this year.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, will you stop?
Yeah.
Just stop.
Yeah.
Just stop inventing ways to be better than us. For God's sake, we hadn't even realised that you could do that. And now you for goodness sake, stop it.
Yeah.
And in Formula E, Techeetah are kind of the same. So they, and it is because of Jev, and it's because of the management structure in Techeetah, and it's because Jev recovered from a very, very bad period of his life. And because the management structure of Techeetah helped and encouraged that. And they push themselves forward to be the team that takes those marginal gains. So every time they can see a tiny gap that they could take something from, they're on it. Rather than a lot of the time, teams are kind of like, oh, we don't know what to do still in Formula E. But they are that team that do know and which are taking the last gap. And so Formula E is not an aero series, but they worked out that slipstreaming is so important that they used it to be able to qualify well in Berlin.
Yes, I remember Berlin's
That's why they were at the front.
Yeah.
And now everyone is trying to emulate them.
And it resulted though. Did we have a Monza?
Yeah. So exactly the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, we had. I think that was the second Berlin track, wasn't it? No, it was the third because they didn't know the timings. They went out and they couldn't all qualify. I think only they got through. Yeah, that was a long
Yeah,
walk.
I mean, I think by that point, everyone had given up,
Yeah,
including me.
I know.
I honestly think.
It was a good way to get the season over, but I didn't agree with it because it was Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday, Thursday. It was just too much. I mean, yeah.
Well, and also it was terrible way. The thing I feel most sorry for was Jaguar I-Pace E-Trophy,
Yeah, they got
which via contracts was obliged to support it. It was the only way that it could have ended its season, I think.
Yeah, and it's over now, isn't it? Yeah.
No one even knew it happened.
I know.
I don't think. And there was some really good fights. It was a really good championship. Actually.
I had it on the screen, so I was watching. Yeah.
But I think barely any. I mean, certainly I had no capacity to cover it because the only thing you could do was cover the Formula E. And I feel genuinely guilty about how much I ignored I-Pace E-Trophy during its swan song because it had some really exciting drivers as well. Like, you know, you had Abby Eaton and Jess Hawkins stepping in. Abby for her second go that year. But like, yeah, yeah. I mean, no one wanted this season to end like that.
No.
So
it was a double header in New York.
There's nothing to be done about it. And I think, to be fair, like Formula E have really learned from it. So we will, when we go to Santiago. Santiago is going to be one of the most difficult races I do. But we will all be bubbled in the same hotel, and so they've included the small percentage of media. So it is, and I'm aware, like, okay, it's a privilege that I have a permanent pass, but also it is a testament to the amount of work I've done. So, like, I am aware I'm very lucky, but also that it's something that I've earned. I'm not a fraud.
Yeah.
Or I try to tell myself that. Obviously, 99% of the time, I'm like,
yeah.
But like, those of us who can be accredited for Santiago, we're being forced to stay in a hotel, which it costs more per night than I have ever paid in my life for
wow
accommodation. The only time I paid more was the time that I went to Monaco, and I was meant to be sharing an Airbnb with my friend, but she couldn't turn up. So I accidentally ended up paying double for a few nights.
Oops.
But yeah, so. It's going to hurt for a long time, and there's stuff like needing to get a PCR test, which costs over £100 before you fly and stuff. But which I understand Formula One have actually paid, but I'm not really doing that, whatever. I think partly because I am the only freelancer that does the full season in Formula E, to my knowledge. But yeah, it's going to be really, really difficult, but they have made the effort to make sure that media are included.
Yeah.
So we weren't in Berlin, but they have made sure that we will be.
For Santiago,
and I'm really, 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 and I'm really, really, and for pre-season testing.
Of course,
and I hugely appreciate the effort that they have gone to make sure that we are within the number in the paddock, because they have to keep it to 1,000 people, which is surprisingly easy in Formula E because you're only allowed 17 members of garage staff.
Didn't that come down to 14?
Which, it's lower than it used to be.
Yeah, I thought it was, because I can remember, I think Jenny Gow did an interview with Alan McNish during the off season or extended break for Formula E. That was, yeah. Just going on there because session's been over for 25 minutes as well, but it's been an absolute pleasure.
I'm so sorry. I'm just talking rubbish.
Oh no, it doesn't matter. We've got nothing else on. This is the last day. This is the last 2 days of the season. We've got nothing else to do.
Oh yeah, you know what? Let's talk about the flipping end of the season. It's the end of the Formula One season. Let's get back on topic.
I was enjoying the Formula E chat as well because I was supposed to this year, because everything got condensed. I was supposed to do little highlights of standing up, analysing the races, but because everything was condensed, I couldn't do it. So I'm glad that we've actually got some Formula E chat that isn't just Formula One on a motorsport YouTube page. So that's fine.
Oh, well, I mean, so Formula E, because it's very weird for me because we're starting our season now.
Yes.
Like, for me, I'm like, we're gearing up. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
And yeah, then at the same time, because I work in F1, it's like end of school.
Yeah, it's very weird, isn't it?
It's like the two things are sort of going in totally different directions. But yeah, I think this is going to be so Formula E, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I love Formula E, and I obviously, you know, I chose to work in it. I had worked in Formula One. It's not that I failed to get to Formula One, it's that I chose to work in Formula E. And it's what I love, and it's the series I devote all my time and resources and energy to, you know. But ultimately, our season end was a big compromise. It was a sad end to season 6. Compared to Formula One have put together a season somehow, and I didn't believe it was going to work. I don't think most of the people I knew in the industry, everyone was like, no, they're just saying things so that they can pay the mortgage. Yeah, basically.
I was expecting it to end after 8. Honestly, I was expecting we'll get to Monza and that's it.
I wasn't even expecting that much. I wasn't expecting them to get to a race.
Oh, right, yeah. Austria was always a bit tense, wasn't it?
Yeah, or they'd do Austria and then there'd be a disaster and then it would all be over.
Yeah.
And I think that you have to look at this season as absolutely miraculous.
Yeah. It's a fantastic effort what they've done.
Yeah, and you know, 3 drivers have caught coronavirus.
I know. I was expecting at least half the field to be replaced, not 3 drivers, and only. Well, I know Grosjean's out of it now, but I'm very impressed that only 3 managed to get it, and they've all come back as well. That was the scary thing, because I think Australia. We were talking about it yesterday. How we got to the end of the season. Australia was always like, Formula One should never have gone to Australia. It should never have happened. But they were all there, and I think it was ridiculous. We got to half an hour before the start of free practice 1 before they said, no, it's over, it's cancelled. You had cars revving up in the pit lane.
I mean, to be fair, almost half the drivers were on planes home by that point.
I think I saw you tweeting as well that at the time, if I can remember that well, Raikkonen and Vettel were on the plane out there. They'd gone.
Yeah, they'd left the previous night. There was almost no one left in Australia at that point, and although there may have been chassis in the garages, it was people locking the doors pretty much.
All done,
Everyone had known. So I actually went to the pub with Sam Collins, the technical journalist for
F1 TV,
for Formula One, and also Super Formula, and Leo Gorman, who they both commentate on Super Formula, and we knew each other. We went to the pub that night. It's before lockdown in Britain. And we were basically placing bets on like whoever had to buy the next round on when the Australian Grand Prix would be cancelled.
That is a fantastic way to spend.
Everybody knew it was cancelled.
Yeah.
But like
When the
it was
official.
just what minute will they
Yeah.
actually find it? Because the thing is, we knew it was cancelled. It was just whoever accepted liability and whose insurance had to pay out.
Yeah.
Basically.
Farm Australian government.
Yeah. And like basically, could you still have to pay 13 million or whatever the hell?
Yeah.
Or I mean that's an understatement. It's in the 3 figures of millions.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was, there was zero question even before they turned up that it was cancelled. It was just who blinked first.
Yeah.
And
then we went.
Which, I mean, it was very surreal for me because our season had started normally.
Round 4, yeah.
We'd done the start of our season, so we'd had Riyadh, which was great.
Santiago.
I realised people. Yeah. Santiago,
Yeah.
which again banging. So Riyadh, Formula E is kind of like a disruptive event because we have like these big pop concerts and there's all these young people going mad.
Yeah.
And stuff. It's very interesting to be part of. I don't know how much else I can say, but yeah. And Santiago, there were riots happening in Santiago, obviously, to do with corruption in the government, and particularly to do with transport. So the protests in Santiago started over the price of public transport, and then have sort of escalated. And I need to finally cut together this long YouTube video I've been doing for about 3 years now.
Oh wow!
About Santiago's public transport system. But yeah, it felt very volatile.
Yeah.
Like there was tear gas everywhere. There was I mean, there were literally water cannons being fired. I went for dinner with somebody from a team.
Yeah.
And we were just like having dinner and beers and whatever. And there was literally a water cannon got fired down the street outside. And we were like, oh. But
yeah.
And you know, because I used to be a war correspondent, my sense of danger is impaired, so I walked into the protest and got mugged by somebody. But,
oh god! I remember your phone. Yes, I remember you tweeting.
Yeah. Because I got tear gassed and I just didn't quite manage to hold on to it. But I mean, it was fine in the end. Like honestly, if you're a journalist and you travel internationally and you don't treat your phone as a disposable object, then like
yeah. I know. I mean, I'm sure I've got that, but that's not my phone I'll take anywhere ever. I'll have backup and things. Yeah.
I mean, like, so I use this is not a Spawn thing, but I use a Huawei P20.
Yeah.
Which is about £150 to replace now.
Yeah.
And has a staggeringly high definition camera.
Yeah.
So like, it does everything I need it to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's it. To be honest, it actually has more processing power than my MacBook.
Oh wow. That probably sounds like the best journalist phone you could probably have.
Yeah. And like, you know, there are fancier Huawei's, there are fancier phones that you can get, but like
don't get too attached.
Whatever. Yeah. But yeah, so we'd started our season in kind of controversial circumstances, and then we were all in Marrakesh, and we kind of knew it was the beginning of the end in Marrakesh.
Yeah, it had that feel, didn't it?
Because the Geneva Motor Show, so we were all meant to be going to the Geneva Motor Show, and that was cancelled whilst we were in Marrakesh.
Yeah.
And that was the last pre-COVID motorsport event.
Formula E just got in, and I think didn't Jeff have an upset, and the test driver had to go in? Yeah,
Jeff was so sick.
Yeah.
So I will admit, so I have known Jeff for a very long time, and in the early days of Formula E, he would sometimes be ill.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it would be kind of slightly more complex than that. And I mean, no, sorry, I'll just put it out there. It would be wine flu.
Yeah.
Just
put it out there. Everyone who watches Formula E remembers when Jeff came in to Punta de Leicester.
Yeah, I mean, like, because the man was super screwed up. Like,
Toro Rosso just dropped him like that. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think people, because there weren't very many eyes on Formula E at the time.
Yeah.
I don't think people quite realised how staggeringly messed up Jeff was. But like,
he was sort of closed off, wasn't he? In the early part, he's like, from what you were you there season 1? I think you might have been. I thought you were. From what I got from watching on the television, and I've seen everyone. I got that he was sort of standoffish when he got there, like it was probably was below him, and then he slowly opened his shell a little bit, and he's like, "Wow, this is the future." You were there. You've probably got better things than I have.
Jeff was hurting from so many things.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jules Bianchi
He's still in the hospital, wasn't it, at the time? Yeah.
Was a huge factor, and that really screwed with him, as it would.
Yeah.
You know, one of your peers dying, or effectively dying, suffering a deadly injury on track in front of you will, that will screw you up. Especially because he was a friend, especially because he was somebody Jeff loved. And I think Jeff is quite emotional, and I don't. So I'm trying to work out what to say, because I know him quite well, but I don't want to like kind of be weird about him.
Yeah. Say what you see.
He's quite emotional, and I don't think that he would dispute that. He, at the point that he joined Formula E, there'd been the Bianchi thing, but there'd also been the year prior where he had been hospitalized 3 times for starving himself.
Oh, that was because of the driver weight in Formula 1?
Yeah. To try and get down to Kvyat's weight. And, you know, Kvyat was a skinny teenager. And Jeb wasn't. He was so thin when he was first in Formula E. It was really frightening. And he... I think a lot of us have been through times when you're really screwed up and you just can't stop getting into bad habits and doing things, whether that's not eating or kind of punishing yourself for things, or self-medicating in various ways, or whatever. And I would say that for the first 2 seasons he was in Formula E, he was in that very dark place. And there was a sort of wake-up call, sort of low point, like hitting rock bottom in Buenos Aires in season 2, when he was hospitalized again. There's a lot of rumors about it. I don't want to feed any more of them, but that was a low point for Jev, and he then went on to buy Techeetah's entry and to sort of make his own choices. And I personally have found that as a story within Formula E very inspirational. Like I didn't come to Formula E because I was broken, but most of us are in it. And it's because the sport has a tendency to break people. And I think, yeah, it's very, Jeff is still fragile. He was so pissed off at losing the championship in Berlin that he refused to talk to the media and took 6,000 euros of fines instead.
Oh, wow.
He's still, he's still a bitch. And he's still Jeff. Like, he's not stopped being the character that he is. And I want to say, like, a lot of people say he's very moody and stuff. He's always only ever been nice to me, and very generous with his time. And I think it's because I don't look like the conventional motorsport media who he hates.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, he's only ever been really, really kind to me. But like, yeah, it is important to see in sport, especially in motorsport, where in Formula One the narrative is like you bring them up, you test them, and if they break, then
out they go. Yeah. I mean,
and I think it's super important to see in Formula E, like, well, you bring them up, they succeed, and you have people like Sam Bird, who is probably one of the best drivers in the world.
But there is no way race every year, yeah.
Yeah, there is no way on earth he ever would have made it to Formula One.
Yeah, I have to agree. Sadly, yeah.
He didn't have the backing, and he didn't have the junior program. So he was so broke he couldn't pay his electricity bill when he joined Formula E. And I think we are so lucky to have him, and we are so lucky that Formula E picked him up and kept him within motorsport. Because otherwise we would have lost a huge talent.
I agree. He did one race at Le Mans, didn't he? I think 2013, just before joining, in the Ferrari. And then the luck was, I think the car broke down and caught fire in that 2013 race, if I can remember. Le Mans.
Yeah, I mean, he was the WEC LMP2 champion. But he couldn't keep the G-Drive gig because then he was too successful as a driver.
Because it's all about the
because of the grading. Well, no, because of the grading. Yeah. So he couldn't be kept.
Because you got what is it? You got to have one pro driver, 2 AM, isn't it?
Yeah, and you need to have like gold, silver, bronze.
That's it. Yeah.
Grading. Yeah. And Sam had turned gold where he'd been silver, and like
with the
the whole thing is very, very difficult. And I think people really underestimate, especially if people only look at Formula One. So, like, for instance, Kevin Magnussen got asked how he wanted fans to remember him in the official, and this was the official Formula One question.
Yeah,
not a journalist. And it's like, I don't know if you know, guys, but he's not dead.
I know. Yeah, he's still racing.
He's going to IMSA. He's going to Daytona. Yeah. Daytona is quite famous.
Yeah, it's longer than F1's been racing as well, because Daytona's been around since the 1930s or something. So yeah, come on, wakey.
Yeah. Like he's not being sent to the glue factory.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't know. I'm just
just
like. And he actually gave quite a good and sincere answer in that he was like, well, I mean, I guess it will be the podium that stands out, but like, I've done a lot over my career, and I'm not. And he was like, it's a huge privilege to be one of the 20 drivers that is in this series.
I would have opened it up for 24. I think we should have had 2 more teams on the F1 grid going forward, because it's just so. I don't want to say constrained, but it's so unfair because we've got so many talents in there that you don't want to lose. Perez, Magnussen, I would even throw in Grosjean as well, because Grosjean started off rocky. He got he got thrown into the deep end in 2009 after Piquet Jr. left or got thrown out, Then he was dropped at the end of the year, came back in 2012 after winning the GP2 championship, wasn't really in the quite frame of mind. And after that, 2013, 14, I think he was amazing. Podiums in Bahrain on the trot. He was constantly up there with podiums, points, daring moves to the lead. And then Haas came along and it sort of drifted off. Then he drifted back. And now it's sort of, ever since 2019, Haas have been a bit and ahhing with him. I think that's since Magnussen, actually. They're pairing together.
Yeah, I think Grosjean and Magnussen are really interesting drivers. I think if you're talking about Formula One in general, so as examples, I think both of them could have been a Bottas.
Yes, yeah.
And like that's a really weird thing to say because like obviously a lot of people will be like, well, we don't rate Bottas.
Yeah.
But both of them could have been a Bottas if they were picked up for a big team.
Yeah.
And when Magnussen entered, he was in a big team.
Yeah,
he was in
McLaren,
McLaren.
Yeah.
It was just that happened to signal the end for McLaren for a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you have to look at both of them as. I mean, that Haas car is horrible.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just vile.
It's not set up right. It's the wrong engine as well. Yeah.
Yeah, everything about it is bad, and they don't currently, although they will.
Yeah.
Have the same engineering sharing that Ferrari do with. I mean, the Ferrari is horrible enough.
Yeah,
for a start. But Ferrari and Alfa Romeo have a much bigger kind of like part sharing deal. But they're now putting their engineers into Haas with Mick Schumacher coming in.
Yeah, so that they've got 3 teams now Ferrari, which is
basically
nice. Yeah.
And whether they can split the talent, whether they can split the expertise, that's whatever. But it's what's happening.
Yeah.
It's not what Mercedes do. They focus on winning and they supply their power units to their customers, and they kind of go like,
wash hands, goodbye, and deal with it on your own.
I mean, also they go like, oh yeah, you can have our brake ducts, but
oh, good point. Yeah. Photos of the car. Here you are.
Remember that? Remember the start of the season when we were talking about brake ducts?
Well, no, pre-season testing. It was brake ducts, DAS, and it was the fact that Ferrari was suddenly slow again because of their because of their engine. So it was like, what was 2020 like? And I think it helped because F1 broadcast the whole of testing. We wouldn't have known any of that until Austria.
So. Actually, here's a good question. So as we come to the end of this Formula One season, how are you going to remember it?
I think I'm going to remember it as it's a classic season. We've raced at venues where we've not seen a modern era Formula One car. I think I'm going to I'm going to remember it as a record breaking year. For so many reasons. Hamilton, 7 titles, breaking the pole positions even more, nearly got to 100, 91 victories, then 92. We've got more points, I think, in a season combined, which is bizarre because we've only had 17 races. It's record breaking, I think, but it's also, I'm going to remember it as the worst and the best season of Formula One. We've lost the fans, we lost all the races. We've been restricted, it's been condensed, and then it's been the best season because we've had great racing because the stakes are so high. How would you see it this year?
Yeah, I mean, I guess similarly. I think for me, what stands out above anything else is that Formula One was finally dealt such a blow that it had to deal with itself.
Yeah.
So I have worked in Formula One for a long time, and in various capacities across Formula One. And it had always been basically invulnerable. So you could criticize it heavily, but you kind of knew that nothing would happen. And the consequences would be much bigger for yourself than for it.
Yeah.
Formula One this year was finally hurt so badly by the COVID pandemic that it had to start listening to its critics, especially because it had the time to. So things like We Race As One, which rightly there are huge criticisms of, and I do think there's massive hypocrisies in that, and particularly within Formula E's positively charged stuff. You know, I'm not in any way kind of going, oh, well, that's great, we've sorted that.
It's a minor little speck.
It is not something that would have ever happened in the previous year. And I think Formula One waking up to the realities of its profile is something that, because Formula One has been such a small closed group, like we forget how tiny motorsport is compared, like as a population, compared to, like, I don't know, the Champions League or something. Like, you know, motorsport is really small, and it's so intense. People sort of, because you're always being pushed to your absolute limits, it's like, oh, I can't take on, like, you know, a diversity initiative or whatever. But it's like, well, the sport's broken without it. The sport's limited. The sport's, you know, not where it should be without it. And it's only contributing to the way that it breaks people and the way that it puts pressure on people to pretend that we don't need these things. These are good things for everyone. And yeah, I think I will remember it as like a year where F1 hurt. Certainly, you know, it hurt me. As somebody who basically only gets paid if there are events, and there weren't any for a long time. But yeah, it's very. It's been a year where I have been impressed to see Formula One recover and to put together a calendar, but also to see Formula One recover and to put together a plan for existing in the future.
That is
in a way that I didn't really believe it was planning.
Yeah, I think that is, I think, perfectly wrapped up what this year's been for Formula One. Actually, I must admit, could you have imagined to touch on the We Race As One and the positively charged as well? It's a very small step to a much bigger issue that needs to be resolved, which I'm glad that motorsport has sort of broken the taboo subject around, oh, we don't get involved in politics, because it's the most political sport I know, motorsport. It's got its own So get everything in it and open it up, because motorsport is the one opportunity where everybody and anybody can be equal. Because you don't have it in football, you don't have it in we still have it in tennis. I was going to say tennis because you've got mixed doubles, of course, but it's motorsport really the one true sport where you can be equal with everything, and it's been too long.
Yeah, and because of that, so because we have the fact that you could, that has been ridden on to pretend that it is this meritocracy, and you get the word meritocracy trotted out so often by so many people for whom it has worked. The only people who say it's a meritocracy are the people for whom it has worked out. And for the people who've been sidelined, for the people who've had to fight in it, that is just a joke.
Yeah.
Like, You know, motorsport is not a meritocracy. There are many, many factors that contribute to success in motorsport, but one of them, and we cannot ever overlook this, is overwhelming amounts of money.
Yeah.
Um,
Money talks.
yeah, and the privilege to get access to things like paddocks, to even attend races as a fan is money. And it's money to a degree that very few sports understand. Like the amount of money to get even to be a journalist in motorsport is fucking staggering.
Yeah.
Like the amounts are just unbelievable. And like I do get paid for what I do. But I also have to, you know, I will have to accept next season that I will make a loss on most races because of the COVID controls.
Yeah, as you said earlier with the.
Because I'm gonna have to pay more than I've ever paid.
Yeah.
By a huge degree. And so I'm gonna have to find some way to offset that. And I don't. This isn't a flex. This isn't me being a bellend. But this is me kind of being honest about the reality of that, which is that I will lose money covering next season as probably the best known Formula E journalist. I don't want to be a tool about it, but I think I probably am.
I think you're the only one I see who constantly covers Formula E.
Yeah. And I, you know, there might be better or whatever journalists, but like I'm the one that people know about.
Yeah.
And also, you know, my articles get millions of hits a year. Like because I have to tot it up for the FIA at the end of every year to reapply for my permanent pass.
Yeah.
And I think last year I hit 6.4 million.
Wow.
So I'm not like a small concern. And I'm going to lose money.
Yeah.
On covering the Formula E season, which is smaller than the Formula One season.
How many races how many was it on the actual predicted calendar? It was 4...
So in theory we'll have 14 events.
That was it, yeah. Because it has to be 8 now because it's a world championship, doesn't it? 8 has to happen.
No, I think we're still on 6.
Oh, okay. So,
yeah. It depends on the size of the...
Oh yeah, the calendar. Yeah, it's confusing.
But yeah. I think we're looking at 14 events.
Yeah. And that's just more and more time away for you, because presumably you've got to quarantine as well in between races.
Yeah. And also, I mean, there's going to be races where I'm going to have to go back to back and stuff.
Yeah.
I would guess I'm going to have to do Europe back to back and be very strategic about the quarantine.
Yeah.
Because assuming we race in Europe, I don't know.
I think it sort of got to, really, at least maybe a controlled event like maybe Donington could replace London or Paul Ricard.
Which is actually really interesting. So we are looking at the risk of Formula E having to run permanent circuits.
Yeah, which I think is a massive shame. Because because like the cars are not built for permanent circuits. It just, I mean, it's not that they look slow, because yes, they are slower than Formula One cars, but like go to a Formula Ford race and you're like, oh, it's race cars. Yeah, you don't care. Yeah,
like they're slower than Formula One cars. It doesn't really matter, and especially when you're at a track like Formula E cars. And this doesn't come across on the broadcast, but if you have the slightest interest in Formula E, and if we get crowds back, go to a Formula E race. I cannot possibly encourage you hard enough, because the cars on the broadcast sound like...
Yeah, I get it in the ear,
And in real life, they sound like friggin' ghost jet engines. They're so weird as a noise.
Yeah.
So that whine that you get from the MGU, the spin of the MGU, is very little of the noise. What you hear is the turbulent air under the floor.
Yeah.
Because that's the only place that Formula E cars have any downforce whatsoever, and they don't have any downforce. So,
No, they're constantly, you can see.
But also, they're bringing that floor back to Formula One in 2022, so you will get that noise, and that will be really exciting. That's going to sound, because it sounds scary. It sounds like it's coming for you. It's a really disturbing noise.
I can't wait now. Yeah.
Also because it's disturbed air, and it kind of as it goes past you, you're like, woo.
That feeling, yeah.
And it's really cool. So it's not, and that's at any circuit. It doesn't matter if you're at a street circuit. It doesn't matter if you're at Valencia.
Yeah.
And it's not. And Techeetah actually did a bunch of setup work at Valencia because they were like, we might come back here. We don't.
That's
know.
a good point. Yeah. Spanish round as well.
Because we were set to go back to Valencia in April rather than Rome originally. Like we'd all booked flights and hotels for that.
Yeah, because I remember. Yeah, because it was supposed to be the end of the season in Valencia because all the cars were taken back there, weren't they? Yeah, and then they suddenly decided, let's do it in Berlin.
They just decided we couldn't do anything at that point. But up until about 9 days before it, we all genuinely thought it was going ahead.
Yeah.
And we're ready to turn up. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting seeing what happens. Formula E was designed to be very agile and lean. So it used to have almost no staff as an organisation, like unbelievably low numbers of staff. And be very, very it assumed that the whole calendar could be cancelled any time because it could. And that was how the first 3 seasons worked.
Yeah.
And now it is a little bit more heavyweight. And I'm a little bit concerned. It's I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think it's a very fragile time for Formula E. It's an unbelievably fragile time for Formula One. It's very hairy for the whole of motorsport. But I think we should all be encouraged that there are seasons happening, that there are seasons announced, that we've got to friggin' Abu Dhabi.
I know.
It's happened.
It's amazing. And we've had a great season, 5 different winners, loads of different podiums. I think the podium stat was up to 12.
George Russell nearly won a fucking race.
I know. If you told me that at the beginning of 2020, I would not have believed you in a month of Sundays. Because I cannot believe that one. Darn Mercedes pit stops. But actually, we've been talking during the hour off break. I've just seen...
sorry.
It's all right. We've got nothing else, as I say. I've just seen that Sky have come on for their qualifying. And I'm just seeing Hamilton walking in with Roscoe, ready for quali. But going in for this one then, 2020 is going to be done and dusted, but we're still going to be feeling it going forever. Presumably, next season, everyone is going to be a bit more relaxed. They'll have a Formula E of... How long have they been off now? They were off since August. Did the test in early December, now going back in late January.
Mid-January, yeah.
Mid-January, yeah. So they haven't got long, really, to wind down.
No, everything's in freight to Santiago right now.
Yeah. So the question is everyone going to be out in 2021 to say, right, last year, that doesn't count, this is what I can truly do? So they're all going to be hungry to get going.
Jaguar, yes.
Yeah, because they've got Sam Bird now.
100%. Jaguar were...
Can't remember, yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen anything more painful than Jaguar in Berlin.
Yeah.
They were set to take the title.
Yeah.
Technically, Da Costa was in the lead going into Berlin, but they were set to take the title, and they were set to take the title with Mitch.
Yeah.
And they had worked so hard over the off period during a very painful time for the Jaguar Land Rover group.
Yeah.
In terms of losses. And like the Formula E team is like very, very important to them, and something that they'd had to justify, whatever. And then to watch it just fall apart and get worse, and because you knew if things weren't right for Berlin, there's nothing you can do about it. And it's 6 races in 9 days. That's it. You've got to live through this ritual humiliation.
It got worse and worse, although, as you were saying throughout, yeah.
Well, and like your powertrain is getting more knackered, your battery is getting more knackered, because you're only allowed one of everything in Formula E.
Yeah.
Over the course of the season, and the temperatures were very high, which obviously was putting everything under a huge amount of strain. Everything that could possibly went wrong did. James Colado's car tried to kill him.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, that was
going
a bizarre
live. One. Like it's very rare for a Formula E car to get the red light, which means the electrical system has gone so badly wrong that you can't touch the car. But it fully did, and yeah, it was. I mean, it was staggeringly disastrous, and they desperately want to resolve that. Of course,
they need to. They want to. They need to. Yeah.
They have invested so much in Formula E. They've really pushed the program. They know they've got one of the best drivers in Mitch, and also now in Sam joining him to push Mitch harder. They are so deadly serious about it, and it hurt watching them get so pasted. It also hurt watching BMW get so pasted. I mean, it wasn't quite as painful for them, but it was. But yeah, Jaguar were really. I mean, to go from leading the championship to scrabbling for points.
Yeah, right in the back as well. Yeah, constant errors in corner.
And consistently at the back was just dire. So yeah, they're going to be out for vengeance. Audi and BMW will be looking to try and take a last hurrah. They're obviously leaving the sport at the end of the season. For various reasons entirely unrelated to Formula E and entirely related to their corporate structures.
It's bizarre. They came in and they've gone again without blinking an eye. Yeah.
COVID has affected a lot of things, and one of them is the way that those two organisations are approaching motorsport. But I don't. I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh my god, Formula E's dying. No, Formula E had 4 German manufacturers in it. It did not need all of them. We'll get Korean manufacturers, we'll get Chinese manufacturers, get American manufacturers. To be honest, the traditional European OEMs are not Formula E's market.
No, that we'll see Ferrari joining.
When Audi entered Formula E as a factory team, they had not made an electric vehicle.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, they didn't, did they? Yeah, they had nothing.
So I don't think we need to worry that much. Like they're like, well, now we've made an electric vehicle, so we're going.
Yeah, it's a bit.
And it's well, I mean, like you guys are kind of not the market for this.
Yeah, I mean they're off back to Le Mans hybrid Daytona. What was it? Le Mans Daytona hybrid class.
Dakar as well.
Yeah.
So they will continue with EV development in Dakar. Dakar.
Yeah.
My English is really bad. I don't know. I mean, like, what can you really...
Yeah.
So I think there's lots of things to be read into Honda's departure from Formula One that go beyond the fact, and lots of people were like, ha ha ha, just say it's all about the money. Yes, it is. Obviously, it's all about the staggering amounts of money. But also Honda leaving Formula One is apocalyptic.
Yeah.
That leaves three
Three.
manufacturers in the sport. You know, you're getting close to an IndyCar situation where you've got the two engine suppliers.
Yeah, Chevy and Honda over there.
Yeah. And Formula One likes to think of itself as a different series to that.
Not really that much difference, if I'm honest. They've got,
No.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it likes to think of itself.
It's even doing Rovals. Yeah, go on. Yeah, I said Roval, road course oval.
But yeah, Formula E has or had or has until the end of this season 9 manufacturers, including one of the biggest vehicle manufacturers in the world, which no one seems to really kind of clock, which is Mahindra.
Yeah, Mahindra's in everything.
Mahindra are more important to Formula E than Audi.
And it still bugs me we haven't got an Indian race. Really does. I mean, I know it's another road, it's another permanent circuit, but the Bud International Circuit's right there.
The problem with India is there's a really complicated. So India has a very complicated tax situation with sport. Which basically makes international sport totally unviable in India.
That's why Formula 1 got kicked out, yeah.
Yeah, and because, like, my God, yeah, like, we would love an Indian race. We'd love, Formula E is much more focused on expanding into South America, into Asia, into Africa, than it cares about Europe.
Yeah.
And that offends a lot of sort of the traditional bit.
I mean, I can't really see why. Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's where stuff's happening.
Yeah.
For EVs, like particularly Asia, and at the end of the day, like you can't try and shoehorn going like, oh, would you like an electric vehicle?
Yeah.
We've heard about it. I think you might be able to drive 100 miles on this one that Porsche made. It's very special. They made it in 2019. It's very important. Compared to like countries where they've had, where they make the majority of EVs.
Yeah.
Like it's just a joke, and like people outside Formula E are like, oh, it's very important to have Germany. No, it's not.
No.
No one gives.
Yeah. It's not important at all. Yeah. It's the wrong areas to keep, as you say, to put them in. Honestly, I would like to see. I don't know how you feel, but I didn't like the Beijing track a lot. From whether I much prefer Sanya at the moment. But it's a bit. I don't like the fact that it's a bit too far away from where we need to be to make big statements. Sanya.
Yeah, I would love a Shenzhen track.
Yeah.
Partly because I could go and hang out with my friend Naomi, and
Perfect.
we could have like a huge riot around Shenzhen.
Yeah.
But also, Shenzhen as a tech city would be perfect.
I think Hong Kong was.
I mean, it's just a bit difficult to. Well, we'd massively outgrown Hong Kong.
Yeah, I never liked the substation.
And there was no way to really expand that circuit. I mean, it was less than 2 kilometers. I think.
Yeah, and red flags in 2 of the 3 races.
Yeah, I mean, it was just very messy.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, there's a political situation. There'd been the political situation in Hong Kong, so like. It would have been stupid to go there anyway. But God, it's weird seeing. Sorry, I've just looked across the sky, and it's weird seeing George Russell back in the Williams now.
I know. I can't. I'm not used to it. Getting back in that Mercedes. Yeah, 3-car teams. That's something. 3-car teams is what we need. That'll be something fun because then we can have.
I mean. Does anyone honestly think Valtteri Bottas is going to hold on to his job unless he takes the title in 2021?
No, he won't. He'll be gone. Unless he can win the title, as you say, in 2021, or by some unusual thing, Lewis retires at the end of this year. I don't think Bottas will keep his job.
Lewis isn't retiring.
No, he's got. I've 2 years. He won't. I think I've heard
if,
one.
If Lewis was going to retire, he wouldn't have come back for this race.
Yeah, he would have just gone.
Like,
Yeah.
if you were a man willing to retire and reflecting on your title, you would not have pushed yourself through the. So I've had coronavirus and it's been horrible. And he was symptomatic.
Yeah.
So but yeah, like, you know, you don't push yourself through that to come back because you don't care.
Yeah.
You push yourself to come back because it's your car and you want to be in it. And I have absolutely zero reason to believe from the years I first spoke to Lewis 18 years ago.
Oof, it's his age, isn't it?
Which is a testimony to how fucking old both of us are. But yeah, I mean, I do not believe there is. Lewis does not know what he would do if it was not driving Formula One cars yet.
Yeah, yet.
I think he's working on that. I think he's working on an exit plan, but he is not there yet.
I think as I start coughing. Sorry about that, I've now coughed. I think Lewis post Formula One, I think he's already an ambassador, isn't he? I think for UNICEF. I think because that was, I thought so. I think he'll be a fantastic global ambassador for equality, and he's already pushing that. But I think if he if he gives his time, because I can't think of the right word, if he gives his time completely and solely to that, I think he'll be known as one of the greatest motor racing and greatest people in history, because he's in a position where he's got fans all the way around the world. He's in a push for equality. It's unusual. People are refusing him, but people refused past historians like Martin Luther King, Gandhi, even people like Florence Nightingale. At the time, they never saw the genius that we're now seeing from Lewis. He's in a position, he's pushing it. And one thing yesterday, I'm sure you saw it, he entered the paddock in his own style of clothing, and everyone was going, oh, he looks ridiculous. He looks ridiculous. He's brave enough to wear what he wants. He's confident. And I think that's a fantastic message for him to put out there.
Yeah, I think when you look at Hamilton, when he first entered Formula One,
yeah,
and when he had the hood buzz cut, was in, you know, Ron Dennis.
Yeah.
So this is something that, like, just sounds completely off the wall to people who might have become fans or become more involved in Formula One in the last few years.
Yeah.
But up until 2017, if you were a journalist visiting the McLaren Technology Centre, you had to wear a tie.
Oh.
And I ignored this rule once.
Yeah.
Because I was like, well, I don't wear a tie. I'm a woman. I don't wear shirts. And I had to put a tie on over what I was wearing.
Oh my God.
Because it was a rule.
Ron Dennis's rule, presumably.
So yeah. And that was how tightly regulated everyone was.
Blimey, yeah.
And this was considered, you know, if you get lax about this kind of discipline, then your team will fall apart.
Quite the opposite.
And now, obviously, you know, you look at McLaren and it's a very, very different situation. And you know, probably their team fell apart partly because of trying to stick to those kind of rules instead of trying to be more creative and stuff. But yeah, when Lewis first came into the sport, it's very hard to estimate how much of an impact he had, because I mean, there had never been a black athlete in the sport. I know that Willie T. Ribbs did test, but it was pretty closed. No one really covered it, to be honest.
Not in those types
It's
of,
quite
yeah.
retroactive that we talk about that.
Yeah.
And
I think
you
Jake,
know,
yeah.
it's been incredibly white and incredibly limited, not just in who is part of the sport, but in who is in the small number of people who are allowed in, how those are allowed to behave.
Yeah.
And to see Hamilton grow into somebody who is able to express who he is, yes, it's because of his success. Wehrlein was never afforded the same clemency.
Yeah.
Let's be extremely real. You know, the prejudice is very high. And if you so like Wehrlein, even within paddocks, you hear about him. People stop just short of the word uppity.
Yeah.
But they're very clear that he's a diva who wanted more than he deserved.
Yeah.
He's a fucking racing driver. You
I know.
like.
I've never
Obviously
met one
he
that
wanted
isn't.
to
Yeah.
win.
Yeah.
And he's also one of the sweetest people I've ever met. Like, he's a genuinely very sweet, very hardworking person. He's adorable. He's very funny. Even when he's tired and peed off, he's not snippy, really. And like, yeah, you do get the worst side of racing drivers. Like, you know, if I was crashed out of a race, I wouldn't give me a very good quote in Media Penny.
Precisely. Yeah.
But like, you know, you have to appreciate the human in a bunch of levels. But yeah, like, he gets the way that Wehrlein is regarded.
Yeah.
Is how Hamilton could have been if he hadn't had the opportunity to get the success that he has. And it is depressing that he has had to prove it to the point of breaking every record.
I know. He's
And
still yeah.
There are people. Yeah.
It took him this long to get Sir Lewis Hamilton as well. That was wrong. Should have happened years and years and years ago.
I mean, the honours system is a joke. I mean,
Yeah.
and like, honestly, like, bin the whole thing off.
The only person I'm annoyed hasn't got it is Murray Walker. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I don't know if we gone off. Oh, can you hear me?
There?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Ah,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I was just saying, the only person that I'm annoyed hasn't got it is Murray Walker. Oh, I think we've lost. Yeah, I think we're having connection issues at the moment. I mean, after 2 hours and 20 minutes, it might be still there. I don't know. Can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you.
Lovely.
I don't know if my
We can still see you and hear you, so
internet is playing up, so
we might have to wrap up then horribly if that's the case.
Oh no, well that's fine.
I know.
It's been a while, and thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for joining me in the box as well. And you messaged and said, and I said at the top of the broadcast, you were worried about your first time commentating. You've been an absolute natural in the box, absolute natural.
I do talk a lot, so
that's what commentating is. I think you could give Jack Nichols a run, get him out the FE box, and you go in instead. I think you do better.
I can stand in for Jolien, maybe.
Jolien. No, well, Jolien seems to be part of the furniture at BBC now. He's even taking some of the leads.
I genuinely think that Jolien Palmer is one of the most valuable assets to Formula One commentary, like just generally beyond the BBC and that team.
Yeah.
To have somebody who has driven the modern hybrid era cars and who understands them and who actually enjoyed driving them.
I know. Yeah.
Is so valuable because all of the insight that he gives, like, he can say, oh, engine mode X, oh, that means this. Whereas Brundle's just like, well, we didn't have engine mode.
I know, yeah. I mean, I must admit, this year, because I've done every session live for a couple of years, but this year we've done them live on YouTube. And I must admit, it's nice not hearing the tones back from Sky every now and then. It's nice to have direction of your own, and then you don't go off on silly topics. Because I think it's been fantastic to talk about purely motorsport, and I think that's what it's sort of lacking. That's why I like the BBC coverage as well, actually, because I listen back post race as well. Yeah, and that I've got that much free time. I listen back to the BBC because why not? See what everyone else is doing.
I've said this before and I'll say it again, but Jolyon Palmer is the only man I will allow to explain Formula One to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think I think Jolyon is incredibly qualified, and pre-season testing, his only F1 TV thing he did, I thought that was fantastic. Get him on permanent. But yeah, 2020 sort of halted all that. Just how brilliant would Formula One be with Nichols, Palmer, and Gow on the main commentary feed? Yeah.
Well, if you have the F1 app, that is a reality.
Good call.
But yeah, that's not a plug. I'm not paid.
Oh, don't worry, we've been plugging things all year. Nothing's turned up.
But yeah, I